You have seen some cryptic tweets coming from me as of recent. Now you're starting to learn a little bit about what I learned over the course of the weekend. It has been an absolute wild ride when it comes to this entire story. There's more continuing to come out. There was one report that came out that vindicated Michigan, but one that also seemed to vindicate Ohio State. We're going to get into all of it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. First off, I want to thank all the people who came up and introduced themselves to me as I was coming to the game and being at the game and all of that kind of stuff. If I was a little bit more brusque than I would, maybe I'm on here, it's because my lens broke. My main lens, my Sigma 120 to 300, decided it didn't work. I found that out as I started at the game. So thankfully that's in for repair. Hopefully it'll be done before Penn State. But my apologies to anyone that felt like I didn't wasn't wanting to be very conversive or chatty. I spent the whole pregame trying to figure out what was going on and what to do, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so the Empire Strikes Back, the Zendaya smirk, all of these different things that you've seen me kind of put out there. Even the Hamilton, wait for it, those were all just kind of clues, okay? That's funny because obviously we did a podcast since the first Zendaya smirk that I posted, which happened to coincide with a Blake Corum touchdown. That was purely accidental. I just got done having a conversation that alluded me to kind of where we sit today. And then I put it back out there after someone said, I know you're not talking about the Blake Corum touchdown. I'm like, you're right. Okay, let's redo it. And then I thought of the Empire Strikes Back as being a more appropriate response. And then today I put the Hamilton, wait for it. That still stands, right? Because this is just the beginning. So here's where we're at the moment. If you've been following along with everything I've been saying for the last couple weeks, right? It was I don't even know how many Wednesdays ago. The Wednesday after all of this started. 2 weeks ago-ish, I guess, a week and a half, 2.5, I don't even know. I had told you that teams trade signals, and that's a thing. Okay, so I had told you that, and now the AP comes out and says that these teams were trading more so amongst each other, which is a potential violation of the Big Ten sportsmanship policy, which just so happens to be what Jim Harbaugh is supposedly going to be suspended under, is the fact that they say that is the mechanism that they can use to suspend Jim Harbaugh, is the Big Ten sportsmanship policy. So funny that now, right now is just this vague nebulous thing. It's not like in this report, it doesn't give you a number of schools or any names. It is, I will tell you this, it's 3 schools. You'll know the names shortly when those come out. And it'll just be what it is, okay? So we'll just wait for that to come out before we just start to discuss it. It will drop before too long. I don't know if it's going to drop tonight. I don't know if it's going to drop Tuesday or Wednesday. But at some point, there will be names named, more details, all of that stuff. That kind of somewhat, at least, because remember, it isn't Connor Stalions. There's 2 things here. It's not about sign stealing. It's about methodology of sign stealing, okay? So if Connor Stalions sending people to, non-staffers to the games is if you're starting to say, okay, well, they're staffers because he hired them, right? If that's the allegation and that makes them staffers, then if you are attaining signs from another school, as Brian Cook tweeted, wouldn't that make that other person a staffer of the school they're not belonging to, but the ones that gave you the signs, right? We're talking about methodology. Number 2, this is just another reminder. This whole thing has been a political hit job. I don't care what Reese Davis goes on Paul Feinbaum and says the media doesn't have it out for Jim Harbaugh. Well, maybe you don't think so, but you clearly, A, haven't been paying attention to how political hit jobs work. And B, you're being very uncritical of the way that all of this has gone down. And now you're seeing Michigan essentially striking back. because as Larry Lage, who is hilariously being called a Michigan fan reporter, who actually literally was Sparty. He went to Michigan State. He literally was the Sparty mascot. Larry is one who asks very critical questions of Jim Harbaugh and players and all of that kind of stuff, right? So he reports that there's going to be more reporters that are out there that are going to drop more information about this whole thing. But Larry Lage reported that it was a former Big Ten staffer who was a sign stealer who feels that Jim Harbaugh is being treated unfairly in all of this. And to the untrained eye, that might look like, oh, like I said, see Ohio State people being like, oh, he's being treated unfairly and making fun of it. Listen, inside these football programs, maybe not inside the athletic departments, but inside these football programs, they understand like what's real and what's not real, right? They understand like the benefits, the drawbacks. They understand what their teams do. They understand, what other teams do, all of these things. And it really, when you understand that sign stealing and going kind of a little bit above and beyond and all of these things is pretty commonplace. Hence, that's why I've been hammering that quote time and time again. All right. So once you understand that, you sit there and think, then why are all these people that are sitting in glass houses just throwing stones? Well, partially because they didn't expect Michigan to fight back. Right? The whole goal is to get Jim Harbaugh suspended. That's, again, I know I've said this a million times over. The whole goal was to get Jim Harbaugh away from, extricated from Michigan. That was the goal. And they've come very close to succeeding in that goal. And as far as everything kind of turns here, it looked like I was led to believe over the weekend that the plan was for the Big Ten to make that happen today. And then this morning, driving from the camera repair shop in Wyandotte to Ann Arbor, it's dropped that, they're going to wait. They're going to let Michigan respond. Now, you connect those dots now and you say, I wonder why, because in the AP reporting, the Big Ten and the NCAA both have this information now. Okay. Mutually assured destruction it is. And Michigan this is not by anywhere close what Michigan has, okay? The Empire Strikes Back. This is Hoth, okay? This is Hoth. The rest of the movie takes place much more off. I mean, granted, Hoth is actually a pretty prominent part of the movie, but we're nowhere near Cloud City, is what I'm trying to say. We're not hanging out on an asteroid, and all of that, finding gun darks and stuff like that. We're not anywhere close to any of that. Now, that said, as I described to a friend of mine earlier today, Michigan wants peace. Think of it in terms of a battle. Michigan just wants peace. Those who are pushing for Michigan's destruction here do not. They want destruction. Michigan has decided it is now time for us to find a way to get peace. Once we can get to that point, and peace also means a little bit of restoration. The name has been sullied. Once they reach that point, then perhaps there's some ammunition, there's some different, articles of war that will not be utilized. But until Michigan gets satisfaction here, it's going to use multiple things at their disposal. I know of a couple other things now. Obviously, I'm not going to share them. You will see them if and when they come out, and maybe a year down the road when it's well past, if the NCAA is backed off completely and all of that kind of stuff, then we will, then at that point, we'll share. But hopefully it will just come out and then we can just talk about it. Okay? So that's going to be the goal. We're going to move on to the next couple pieces of information. The Big Ten had a further response other than this morning, and then the chef's kiss to it all that dropped pretty much simultaneously. We're going to get to all that here in just a moment. But before we do, now is the time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Samaj Morgan with his just absolutely electric End around, I think is what it was. I haven't watched the replay, so I just saw what I saw through Patrick Barron's 600 millimeter lens, which means I didn't see a lot of it. Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, something I had searched for years and years and finally found it. Absolutely amazing. Michigan was not having the best day. Certainly was the better team, but just not having a perfect good day. Perhaps that had something to do with Ryan Walters also knowing Michigan signs. Maybe. But Samaj Morgan on a fake one-way takes it the other way, outruns everybody for the long touchdown, essentially fully putting the game away from Purdue. Athletic Brewing Company, just like that, has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. Think about how good that's got to be, right? Like, think about it. Something that's beating out actual beer, and it still has that taste. And guess what? The great part of it is no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic in store, online, and at bars around the country. I have seen it at the local Kroger in Milford. So there are certainly places that you can go and find it in this general area. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy it online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code LOCKEDON to get 15% off of your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer. Exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, let's continue on here. So this is just poetic justice in a way. Big Ten drops Brett McMurphy was the kind of first, I think, and then a bunch of other people confirmed. You saw like Nicole Auerbach, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, and all that. I'm sure some of you have thoughts about that, but whatever. We found out that the Big Ten is issuing, I don't remember how it was phrased, but something like essentially a notice of potential punishment. Like, hey, it's coming down right now. So they gave Michigan 48 hours. About 10 minutes or so after the AP story drops, then the Big Ten, I guess, decided, hey, Michigan, it's time to let you know. It's coming down. Hammer's coming down. At basically the same time, you get an article from Ross Dellinger and Dan Wetzel saying that the NCAA has found no connection with Jim Harbaugh and Connor Stalions. Funny. Almost like we've been saying that for over 2 weeks now. And yet, because the Big Ten dropped that little, hey, we're dropping a notice of intent to punish here, they're able to put in there, well, the NCAA didn't find anything, but the Big Ten's looking at doing it anyway. So what are we doing here, right? Like, what are we doing here? This is just absolutely, it's a clown show. So I don't know how much the Big Ten knew what was going on. If that, again, we said like the 48-hour delay. Maybe that was because of the other thing. I don't know. Maybe they're just sitting there with their heads in the sand and just kind of learning all of this news in real time. Maybe, I don't know. Again, the AP article said the NCAA and the Big Ten has this, but at this point, because again, if they want an indefinite suspension for Jim Harbaugh, they're going to have to get all the university presidents on the same page, or something like a quorum, or something like 70% of them to agree. You might be taking 3 of those presidents out, and you might be convincing some others, and especially if certain teams are starting to look inside of their glass house, they're maybe starting to wonder, is that really a good idea? Now I'm hearing the NCAA is saying that Jim Harbaugh had no connection, according to what we found in our investigation thus far. And Michigan fired. Oh, actually, sorry, they didn't fire. They Connor Stalions resigned. So, what are we doing here? I mean, that's the big question, kind of in general. What are we doing here? To me, that was the coup de grace. Honestly, I did not expect that news to come out today. The other stuff I expected. I was sitting there waiting on it. Honestly, I was expecting names to be named. I already have a pre-write on all of that. But I was not expecting at all this other part that came out. So I do know, again, some more things that are kind of coming down the pike. And I'm just curious to see where it goes. But there is the other thing that Dellinger and Wetzel, who have had a very busy day today, They are saying that the NCAA has notified the Big Ten that Ohio State has no part in the Michigan sign stealing investigations. Now, that does fly in the face of what I've heard, so I'm waiting to see some evidence there, because I had confirmed with a rock solid source over the weekend that Ohio State 100% had to do something with it. Now, does that mean, well, I should say that Ryan Day and his family have had nothing to do with it, according to the Yahoo article. Now, with that in mind, does that just mean that there's a couple degrees of separation or something like that? Certainly possible. Okay. So I think that with that, we just kind of have to lie and wait and see what comes out and see what Michigan comes out with. Again, they have a truckload of ammunition ready to go. They had basically this time last week, they had weaponry, they had no ammunition, and they're just sitting there pointing to the sky and saying, what are we going to do with all of this? I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do with all of this. Now they've got a warehouse full of ammunition. I am telling you, some of it is really good. Okay. So we'll find out how much ends up getting used. Because again, Michigan wants peace. Michigan isn't trying to burn down everything, but they are going to go for mutually assured destruction if the Big Ten is going to continue pushing on this. This is a war on two fronts. Right now, the war is on the Big Ten. There is the war against the NCAA. That's going to be the slow burning war. Okay. Right now, that's not the priority. The priority is the war on the Big Ten, of course. So we will see how exactly they go about essentially assuring that they have peace. I think this was a great shot across the bow. And it's basically letting the Big Ten know, if you want to press on, we can go all day, right? We're Captain America. I could do this all day. We can. And it's you clearly, Tony Petitti, are not Greg Sankey. You're not going to sit there and say, hey, everyone, just fall in line. We're going to work this out. No, this is going to be an airing of grievances that is very public. And it's going to be rock solid. The things that I have heard are rock solid. At least so I've been told. I have not seen them, so I can't say for sure. But there's going to be a lot of cope. You're already starting to see that on social media. There's a lot of cope. And a lot of people that aren't going to believe what's coming out, but names will be named, records will be shown, these things will come out. Everyone's on the same page at Michigan right now. From the lowest staffer to Jim Harbaugh to Ward Manuel to Santa Ono, they're all pulling in the same direction right now, much like the team, the change in the team, culture change. We'll see if that continues. So that's that. Now we're going to move on to just a couple little things here that came out of the press conference. Ric Flair was there for an NIL. It turns out I learned it's an NIL reason that he was there. So we'll talk a little bit about Jim Harbaugh's excitement about that. And Michigan playing the villain. They are embracing that. How fitting. Ric Flair comes, and now they're embracing the idea of being the villain. We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we do, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's super easy to create a job on LinkedIn Jobs. You just have to go in, fill out a few prompts, done. Purple hashtag hiring frame you can add to your profile. Let every single person know that you are hiring. With simple tools like screening questions, it makes it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Just like Michigan's dipped into the transfer portal to get a Josh Wallace, to get a Ernest Hausman or a Ladarius Henderson, you and your company can dip into your own transfer portal, help your company win their own championship. That's how powerful LinkedIn Jobs is. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I do appreciate all the people who want 2 shows a day. I don't know how long you've been listening, but talk about a pipe dream. I don't have enough material to go 2 shows a day, right? Like we've got enough for a show a day. So we're going to stick to that. Now, if there is like an emergency situation, say like I post this and then like an hour suddenly something big happens, then we can run another one. But generally, or if I get like a lot of juicy intel, I might save it for the next day, right? Like if they say like, yeah, it's going to be like, this thing's going to happen in like 3 days, then, there's no rush for it. But nonetheless, so Ric Flair, I'm sitting there. I got to Ann Arbor super early, and someone said, look who's around the corner. And I'm thinking it's going to be like, oh, is Pete Thamel here or something like that. Go and look around the corner. There's Ric Flair in a fancy jacket. I'm sure you saw the picture on Twitter that he posted with him and Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh spoke ad nauseum about the fact that he was there and just how like he had an opening statement about how excited he was that Ric Flair was there. He said the first time he ever went backstage to anything was to a wrestling match, and he got to meet Ric Flair and everything back when he was with the Bears. So pretty cool that for that he gets to like be a friend with someone that he kind of looked up to as a younger guy, young player, still an NFL player, but a young player. But then after that, we got Zach Zinter and we got Jalen Harrell, and both of them saying like, you know what, we embrace the idea of being the villain, right? If everyone's going to come after us with all of this stuff, all this outside noise, I think it was Jalen Harrell said sometimes the villain beats the superhero, right? The villain wins sometimes. So by all means, cast us as the villain. Like they stop short of like, they're still saying one track mind. They're still saying stuff like that. Okay. But it's still, it still feels like that's the type of thing that they say, right? The thing that they say to us. But then off the field, they're like, yeah, let's, we're gonna go after him. Now, this is why. Also, though, it's like you don't want Michigan to press too hard. I feel like maybe that was part of the Purdue game to some degree, but you just don't want to press too hard. You don't want to go out, feel like, okay, we really need to take that level of control and really, yes, you do want to, as Don Brown used to say, solve your problems with aggression. I know he's persona non grata around here for the most part. I still love Don Brown, but you need to do it in a powerful fashion. Now, again, I want to remind you, Penn State, there are some special plans for Penn State that Penn State likely can't prepare for. And unless there's something really nefarious going on. I don't think that Penn State's involved in that personally. If there is, some things I've heard. But we will see. Nonetheless, I feel really good about the idea that Michigan's going to go out there. Michigan's going to embrace this idea of being the villain. And say they need that shoulder chip, right? It's hard to have a chip on your shoulder when you're the 2-time Big Ten champion. But as Jim Harbaugh said after the game, like, this is a priceless gift. It is, because it really, like, this is Michigan for the longest time, including near the beginning of when, like, the Jim Harbaugh era, didn't take very long for them to kind of just be like, we're just going to go in there, we're going to beat you, just go ahead and lay down, right? Like, just think about all the storied history of this program, okay? And another team punches them in the mouth. They're like, what are you doing? You're supposed to lay down. And this Michigan team, not this one, but those Michigan teams, even in the mid-2010s, we're just kind of like, oh, you're going to hit us back. Okay, well, right this way, sir. Just go ahead and would you like some caviar on your way to the end zone? This is not that Michigan team. Already wasn't. But on top of it, this is a Michigan team that just wants to absolutely pulverize you. And we talked on Saturday night, Sunday morning, about how Michigan had its worst game outside of the Bowling Green game on Saturday against Purdue, and still won by 28 points. I mean, if that's bad, I mean, we've seen the good, but now they've got to show it against a real opponent. Not saying Rutgers wasn't a real opponent. I think Rutgers actually is. That's weird to say, but that's true. Michigan's also played like a different team on the road. Like, it's so funny how that script is flipped. Used to be Michigan was going to go play whoever close. I've seen Michigan play Rutgers close on the road, right? That's how those Michigan teams were built for the longest time. Yeah, they would also go to Rutgers and win 78-0, but they would also go to triple overtime with Rutgers. Okay, so, a couple overtime games against Indiana, not good Indiana teams, stuff like that. So this is a different one. We've seen Michigan go on the road and just thrive. They know that this is the moment they've been waiting for. Penn State's already had a moment they've been waiting for, and they lost against Ohio State. How is Penn State going to respond if Michigan goes in and punches them in the mouth? Now, offensive line needs to be better. J.J. McCarthy needs to be better. Run game needs to be better. A lot to be alarmed about coming out of the Purdue game. That said, mostly things have been good. Now, we have seen sometimes things to be alarmed about, and they turn out to be glaring weaknesses. I don't think that's the case here, but we'll find out as we go along. But it's good that they have the motivation and that they can move forward that way. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back on Tuesday as the saga continues. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back then. Peace.